This is Robert Murlacci, the Mindshare Learning Board, Canada's Learning and Technology e-magazine here at the Mindshare Workspace in beautiful Erin Mills Town Center in the great city of Mississauga. And I'm honored to have joined me for Mindshare TV Learning Moment, Jennifer Corriero, who is the founder and executive director of TakingITGlobal, who's here to talk to us about the student-led microgrants Rising Youth Canada project, its inspiration and impact. She's just fresh back from Geneva, where she was speaking at a youth leadership summit. Thank you for joining me today, Jennifer.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome back. And just a little bit about Jennifer. As I mentioned, she's the co-founder and executive director of TakingITGlobal, a not-for-profit organization that designs and delivers youth engagement programs leveraging the power of technology, creativity, and community involvement. She has expertise in the area of facilitation, program design, community development, mobile learning, and systems change. She has a master's in environmental studies and serves as an adjunct professor with the Faculty of Health at York University, my alma mater and former employer, where she helped design a course titled Agents of Change in a Global World. Wow, now you are also a proud graduate of York.
I am.
And
And a Bryden Alumni Award.
yeah, and I was going to
My
say, and
community.
I sense a honorary PhD on its way
Oh,
one day. So I'm wishing that upon you. And when I wish that upon people, it actually happens. Also, a book. You've been part of a number of books, including with our friend Kathy Hurley,
yes,
right?
that's right.
Who was at our summit in Montreal, but you weren't able to be in Montreal because you were at a global event. Talk to me a little bit about the inspiration for being there, and it all connects to the Rising Youth program that we're going to share today. And
Yeah,
congratulations on the success of the program that we'll talk about.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I was there sharing a workshop on micro grants for citizen-led community impact and lessons learned from the micro grants programs that we've launched and run at Taking It Global. And the biggest success was the Rising Youth Community Service Grants program. So I'm really happy to be speaking to you today about that program.
Fantastic. And what was the feedback like that you received? This seems very innovative and inspired by the federal government funding, no doubt. Um, and when I look at the numbers, over 700,000 students engaged, over $7 million invested. What else am I looking at? The volunteer hours are incredible.
Yeah,
So amazing. But it didn't happen overnight.
no.
Talk to me
For
about the
20 years.
inspiration. It's been said that it takes 20 years to be an overnight success, as per Nancy Knowlton, the founder of Smart Technologies.
Yeah. No, and that's a great saying. And when I was a high school student back in 1998, I was part of the first Ontario student group that required 40 hours to graduate, 40 hours of community
You were the
service.
first. I will not forget that. That's a really good trivia question.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a fun trivia question. And I remember that there were not many placements out there. And I was really creative about what I applied for. And before getting that flat rejection, I was like, I can make up things to do. How about what if I do this or what if I do that? And they accepted me by sort of creating initiative. And then
Right.
also my principal one year called me and I thought I was getting in trouble because I was a few minutes late for school one day. And I said, I'm so sorry. I was explaining why I was late. He said, no, you seem to always have a lot of opinions. And I want to recommend you to join a youth advisory council for the city of Vaughan. So in the end, I applied. I'm in a meeting. They're asking about our ideas. And I said, well, what are we going to do with our ideas? Like, can we actually do the project? I said, what's your budget? And they're just looking at me, well, what do you think you need? So I walked up to the whiteboard and I'm writing on the whiteboard, all these line items. And then at the end, the city councilor said, okay, let me see what I can do. And we got the approval for $1,500. And it was such an empowering experience to go from idea to action. And so Taking It Global, we support young people in bringing their ideas to action. And it took us like about 5 years to get the first concept of microgrants, into play. And we ran about 40 microgrants a year all around the world for over a decade. And then we convinced the government of Canada, as part of the Canada Service Corps in 2017, to take this at scale. So we've been giving almost 2,000 grants a year. So in total, over 7,000 grants for youth-led community service projects in every province and territory. And that has generated over the 700,000 volunteer hours, right? Amazing. So you have one youth leading a project, a lot of them student-based, so many high school students, many post-secondary students. You had to identify as youth between 15 and 30, so you didn't have to be a student, but many students led incredible projects.
And you convinced the government.
We did, at least for 5 years.
How cool is it? How cool is it to turn your passion into a career? Because that's really what, and I managed to do the same thing. So I'm sure you have some great advice that you'll share with the youth, and they are, when you give kids agency, sky's the limit. And in your case, you were encouraged. Kudos to your principal. Your principal really saw something there, and it's incredible that you've continued the journey, and you've turned it into a not-for-profit, and you're still doing what you're most passionate about. You and your co-founder, Michael Furtick. It's kudos to you for that. Talk to me about, and I love this visual of the location of every, grant that was, and it really covers the entire country of Canada and every single province and territory. So talk to me about the impact and some of the innovative projects that were launched.
Yeah, thank you. Principal Day. And big shout out to all the school administrators that are watching, and just to know the power of encouragement of a guidance counselor as well, of a classroom teacher. Just noticing what students are capable of and encouraging them to seek additional opportunities, encouraging them to apply for things, just noticing the good things. I think sometimes a principal might have to deal with lots of trouble that gets sent to the office, lots of paperwork. And so, looking out for greatness and noticing it and encouraging it. Our projects linked to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And by the way, in that map, we did a query over 1,000 municipalities. So we really caught not only the major urban centers, but we made a big effort to reach more rural communities, and we partnered with a lot of groups. But projects. So the top issue, so 1,603 out of 7,000 projects linked to good health and well-being. And this was all through the pandemic as well. So you can see that youth are creating well-being, right? Not just for their peers, but also helping older generations, young children. And then sustainable cities and communities would be the second most popular project area. And the third is quality education.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's fascinating. That really is fascinating. Talk to me about the skills that were garnered from the kids embarking on these projects. You're part of C21 Canada. I'm part of that group as co-founder, and we have the 7 C's. I can't remember them all the time, but there are critical skills that we talk about. What emerged as the ones that they garnered?
Well, first of all, we talk a lot about project-based learning, experiential learning as a critical entry point to develop these skills. And then at the end of the project that youth led through being given these micro grants to run a community-based. So it was community service projects. So the funds were to costs that might be related to, let's say, an event or a workshop. It might cover supplies. And the top 3 skills, so it was communication, planning, and budgeting. And then we had teamwork and leadership. So those would be the top 5 skills that were reported as developed from the participants. And not only the project leader, the person who wrote the grant, but each project had to have a team. So sometimes you might have a team of 5 or a team of 10, but it mobilized a lot of volunteers. And you have to consider this financial literacy as an example, a really important skill, right? We talk about even our current, financial situation. And so by having the opportunity to actually lead a project, and this is where I'm so happy to be sharing with your community of educators and EdTech leaders, if we supported every generation of youth growing up with an opportunity to lead a project in their youth, imagine what people could realize that they were capable of into their careers, not to necessarily for everyone to be an entrepreneur, but to have those project skills in any workplace, whether you work within the education system, within government, within a big business, within civil society, community organizations, within media, like everything is so project driven. And by having funding behind it, and that's the other thing, the skills of like a group project that actually has an impact in the community. It's not only benefiting the learning and the educational part of it, but it's actually strengthening our social fabric in society. And especially, the pandemic created a heightened sense of isolation. And sometimes technology is not facilitated in ways that are really, really benefiting communities. But if we put in the forefront, how can you contribute to your community? How can you address issues that are affecting your everyday? People can go from feeling powerless to feeling empowered as agents of change. And I think if you go to the last slide, 7, you can see some of the other skills there. There we go.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
So it's my new glasses are magnifying this pretty well. But what emerged here? Like, what were the aha moments that came out of this for you that really made you feel that this was a very worthwhile endeavor? Because it wasn't easy. I mean, this requires a lot of effort on your part, on your team, to really get to the grassroots, get the word out. We promoted over time, and it's just sustaining that momentum.
Yeah. I think that adaptation which is in the middle of the skills there, you see adaptation. I would say that in the end, that's probably the most important skill to function in a dysfunctional, because again, going through the pandemic and approving all these projects, a lot of extensions were needed. And so building systems that are adaptable and flexible, and building a skill set among leaders that are able to adapt to external changing circumstances. There's never going to be like circumstances that are always going to be in our favor. And so how do we ensure that we are remaining not only determined, but resourceful? So that resourcefulness, even in the context of a microgrant, there's always going to be more than what you have available. But instead of seeing a deficit, seeing abundance around you. So I would say those things. And what surprised me also is that there's stories, and I'm seeking to learn more. There's stories of alumni that have actually generated more funding. So actually,
that's
also
so cool.
Power of an approval letter. Like they took our approval letter and all the logos of backing them up,
right,
for your, let's say, $1,500, and then they sought additional funding and they secured additional support. So that kind of goes to what is our role as in creating an enabling environment for learning and for leadership.
So on that note, what could education learn? I look at this project and I think of couple of teachers in the Toronto district that won our Schools of the Future Challenge, who had their kids creating like a Dragon's Den challenge for grade 4, 5, and 6 kids, starting a business, branding, marketing, financials, sales forecasts, letter writing, and then they had a showcase. And I go every year, and I'm part of the team mentors that interviews the kids for the jobs they want, team leader, finance director, whatever. Many of these kids come back, and because they've been doing this over 20 years, and go into business,
right,
pursue entrepreneurship because of that specific experience.
Absolutely.
It's incredible. Like when teachers realize the impact they can make and give kids agency in this case, and that you reference it, that project-based learning, right? Micro challenges.
Yeah, I think that challenge, and like you said, with the Dragon's Den approach, and then for us, we're all about that social challenge, which are very complex, very interconnected, the local and the global, and that sense of social responsibility, and also that mindset of social innovation and being creative and finding a way, an approach, something unique, and knowing that there's options and knowing the power of imagination. That is also something that is so important to provide. Also, sometimes you can do things in even a week. Our project life cycle would be 3 months. And in some cases, we actually had teachers promoting this and encouraging it within the context of some sort of course. I know there's some courses like leadership courses out there. There are some budding courses where students are encouraged to take on a project. We partnered with over 200 community organizations as well. 600 community organizations referred, and then 200 we sought out specifically to promote the grants and to provide mentorship as well, and to provide encouragement. Maybe they provided space, maybe if it was evening program, a youth drop-in center, different festivals. So it's very important. Also, sometimes students, while they're in school, they may not have as many linkages. And like I told you, my volunteer experience, the community organizations, they didn't have a lot of staff to manage a lot of volunteers. So you need that initiative. You need that creativity. You need that, making a pitch, like how are you going to pitch?
You're a catalyst, and kudos to you for being that catalyst. And I was going to reference the Sustainable Development Goals. These grade 4, 5, and 6 students were aligning each of their businesses to one of the SDGs. And we've done the same thing with our Schools of the Future Challenge, because it's about impact, right?
Yes.
And the older I get, the more I care about the environment, and it's, for the next generation. And I think if we can pass that mindset off to kids, I think the SDGs from the UN that were inspired by the are brilliant. And I think if we can embed this in the curriculum, what could school districts, faculties of education, what about faculties of education? It all starts. Where does this begin?
Like one idea that I want to share. What if every school, high school, post-secondary, what if there was a micro grants fund? Families could contribute $5, $50, pool money together so that there is a fund for student-led projects that have community impact. Why not? Let's try something like that. It's possible. I
was going to ask you what's next, and maybe this is what's next, right? Grassroots fundraising. I think, I would contribute to it. We are all thinking about, particularly with the climate change and some of the weather patterns that we've seen of late. It's very alarming when you talk to friends who were impacted, and they're like, this is real.
Yeah.
This was, former minister.
Part of the challenge is there's so much, like, let's say, anxiety about the problems, and it can create a paralysis. It can create a fear. It can create, So that's why I do think that supporting the community action, supporting the innovation, supporting the project
Right.
leadership skills, that is the most essential gift that we can give to the generations in school, and honestly outside. It shouldn't be exclusive, but because we're talking about education, I'm focusing on education.
So
Like,
they could be the
otherwise
problem
there's gonna be
solvers
too
of
much
the
fear.
future.
Yeah, like we need to build that skill
Right.
set for complex problem solving, and I believe it's through
Yeah,
project.
that's brilliant. I'm in. Sign me,
Okay.
sign me
I
up.
hope you're all in too, for all the listeners there.
I think I have a check here somewhere in one of my portfolios. But I know, but quite seriously, I think you're onto something, and there seems to be momentum around giving kids agency and experiential learning and SDG. So it's all kind of coming together. And work integrated learning. We're doing a lot of co-op initiatives, and you talked about your hours, community hours. We have students here all the time. This is an incubator of sorts that we nurture. And I have to thank you and your co-founder, because before I opened this lovely workspace, I had the opportunity to tour yours, which
Yes.
provided some real insight. And it's
Thank
5 years now. So our anniversary is in December, and you must be 5 years,
in
maybe
this
just.
office space. No, and you're right. I think that actually that's a good point to also highlight, is fostering more collaboration spaces. And I know with the pandemic, it was this whole everybody in isolation, but I do hope we go back to investing in collaborative, think spaces, learning spaces, workspaces, impact spaces, that hub concept. Not
Yeah.
just hubs in our minds, but hubs in how we interact. To create spaces for serendipity, spaces for laughter, the unexpected, or
Yes,
intentional collaboration. So I think
absolutely.
what you're doing there is very much needed, and is a great model for also fostering more innovation within education. And I think that we also need to. You asked about post-secondary. I do have a message I would like to share. We have a book on our risingyouth.ca website. We have 2
Awesome.
magazines, 2 volumes. I would love these textbooks to be in university course references. I would love to see more linkages between theory and practice. So community
Yes.
organizations, publishing books like learning resources. Here's what's happening on the ground. How do we link that so that as students are reading course material, it's not only academic material, but also publications by community organizations, and also for leading academics to think about how their research can be published in ways for community organizations to continue to thrive. I don't want to start naming names, but there are certain organizations going bankrupt, and it
Yes.
is a critical time, and we need to come together. We need to work together. We need to, like a strong society, a healthy society. It's up to the people. So we
Well,
all need to kind of do our part.
you know, an innovation focused country, a learning country.
Yeah.
Edmonton just declared themselves as a learning city. We need to adopt the mindset of a learning country, an innovation country, which we push that envelope, because those are the countries that thrive.
Yeah.
And so I'm very much aligned with your thinking and inspired by the impact that you've made with this Rising Youth program. You have many other programs that you run at Taking It Global. Your Can Code project. Maybe you can highlight that project as well for educators who might be interested. Code to Learn.
Yes, we've done some great initiatives to help students learn how to code in the classroom. So Code to Learn. We also have Create to Learn, where there's various tutorials looking at digital media skills. We have another initiative called Your Voice is Power, so students learning how to code with music, which is such a great entry point. And
Absolutely.
I do want to highlight as well with just other initiatives, Connected North, and this is through virtual field trips that we're facilitating with Indigenous communities based in northern remote locations, and also just to acknowledge there's such incredible demonstrations of excellence among many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis leaders, and it's been amazing to highlight many of those leaders through a lot of the programs that we're working with. Like Dakota Bear is featured in the Your Voice is Power platform. So just hearing also music that is coming with a strong message, and then so students are learning how to code. There are also different language resources, so many different Indigenous languages supporting revitalization, and many leaders across generations are working together in creative ways. So I just wanted to highlight that excellence that I'm seeing, and I'm incredibly grateful to be a part of as well.
Awesome. And the website they can go to learn more.
Let's say connectednorth.org. Your Voice is Power also .ca.
What about Taking It Global?
Yeah, let's go to TakingITGlobal.org. I know, so many initiatives. And
so many initiatives
for the grants program.
So much impact. And making the time for you today was really, I'm grateful for you taking the time. Fascinating insight and success storytelling around the rising youth. And do keep in touch with us. We can turn this into a weekly show with all that's going on. So Jennifer Corriero, thank you again for your time today. That was Jennifer Corriero, the co-founder and executive director of Taking It Global. My name is Robert Marglace of the Mindshare Learning Report. Be sure to check out www.mindshare.learning to get your latest issue. And until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and keep the learning curve steep.